Okay, hold on one second.
Me, my dad, Max, and I are gonna back up for dinner.
All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the July Labor Council Delegates meeting. How is everybody doing this hot, sunny summery day?
I don't know, nobody left of me. So
And happy birthday, Jeff.
Thank you. It's much appreciated. It was yesterday. It's over. Another day older. I appreciate all the well wishes, but thank you.
And many more. Happy birthday, Jeff.
Thank you. It's quite all right. I appreciate the kind thoughts and the well wishes. I'm not going to get each and every one of your birthdays, so if I've missed it, belated birthday. If it's upcoming, I wish you well on your birthdays.
Maybe at the January meeting, we should like do a big happy birthday to everybody.
I've been at rallies with our president. I know she has a loud voice for getting the message out there and singing and chanting, so it might be an idea, Susan.
Right, and I think we just finished an executive board meeting, so I think our new president, Andrea, may be just grabbing a quick bite to eat before the delegates meeting starts. She'll be joining us in a minute. I'm going to post in the chat.
عارفة.
Just need to find it. I'm just going to post the minutes in case people haven't had a chance to take a look at them yet. Here we are. So the June 2021 general members meeting minutes are in the chat if anybody hasn't had a chance to take a look at them yet.
A couple of times, then punch them in the balls as hard as you can, and see what happens. Poetic justice would be to rub them.
Wait a minute.
400. I'm trying to catch some Z's, but this feature on my alarm clock keeps telling me to wake up every 10 minutes. Laura.
What is the snooze button?
I might ask you all if you could mute your microphones while you're in the meeting. I'm sorry you can't get any sleep, brother, but we all could hear you. So I guess Susan's gone to track down our president.
Okay, buddy, I'm getting in the shower now, okay? 2 minutes, it's a quick shower.
Oh boy. Okay.
Test, test.
Good evening, Brother Cartwright. I see you there with your special looking hat.
It's my northern hat. One person on the call will know what this is.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so hi, Chris.
I appreciate that. That's a nice looking hat John has on there. I know exactly what that is.
That is a very beautiful hat.
Solidarity with our friends up there.
Okay, thank you. So everyone, if you get a chance to see the agenda for this evening, we're going to start. There's a noise in the background, so I'll ask for everyone to mute your, put your whatever system you're using on mute. I'd really appreciate that. And before we go any further, I'm going to ask Sister Jinky Davis to read the harassment statement. Jinky, are you on?
I am. Is there anyone else who's able to read it? My kids are not behaving at the moment. Sorry, everyone, for this.
All right. Okay. Susan, do you have an extra copy nearby?
I do. It is the policy of the Toronto and York Region Labour Council to declare our absolute opposition to any discrimination or harassment. To ignore discrimination or harassment is to condone the acts of the harasser and further penalize the victim. Union solidarity is based on the principle that we are all brothers and sisters and comrades, that we're all equal. Discrimination and harassment erodes that principle because it assumes that some union members are inferior. Discrimination and harassment are expressions of power or perceived power and superiority, and it is intended that this policy send a clear message to harassers that their actions will not be tolerated, and to empower victims with the support of their union comrades. You've got to unmute yourself, Andrea. It's 2021.
Yes, sorry about that. So I'm going to ask Brother Jeff Irons to do the land acknowledgement, please.
Gladly, sister. We are meeting on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the New Credit, which was subject to the Dish with One Spoon Treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and the Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect.
Thank you. Thank you, brother. Susan, over to you.
Yeah, so I mean, we're all pretty well old hands at Zoom by now, but just a couple of quick reminders. As Andrea has asked, if people can keep themselves on mute unless you're stepping up to speak, that would be great. It keeps the background noise to a minimum. Please feel free to use the chat to raise questions or share your thoughts with others. If you want to speak, there's a little blue raise hand function that is either in your participant list. If you open up your participant list and you'll see like a little blue raise hand. For some people it's there. For other people it's in the reactions function, but it's not like the waving hand. It's a little blue raise hand function. So if you want to raise your hand to speak on the statement or some other issue, please use that. The voting procedure will be different. And when it comes time to vote, we're going to be putting a poll up on the screen for you. If you're on the phone and you want to mute yourself, you push *6. And if you're on the phone and you want to raise your hand, you push *9, and that'll raise you to the top of the list. If you do try and raise your hand by showing the waving hand or the thumbs up, we may not see you because there's a bunch of screens that we have to go through. So the little blue raise hand or the *9 on the phone is the best way to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. So before we go any further, any first-time delegates here, anyone that attending for the first time, can you raise your hand? Okay, I see Zakai, that's it. Okay. Well, I want to say welcome. You're in the right place. Unfortunately, we're not able to be together in person, but hopefully you enjoy tonight, and hopefully tonight is the beginning of you're attending this space. It's a House of Labor, whether it's virtual or in person. So you're at the right place. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Lightborn Hunter. I just using my son's computer. That's why it shows up Zakai.
Zakai.
Yeah.
What's your name? What's your name?
Lightborn Hunter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome, Lightborn.
Thank you.
Okay. So next, as Susan asked before, and I hope you got a chance to review the minutes that was either emailed to you or Susan will place it in the chat before we vote on it. Susan, are you able to put it in the chat?
Yeah, I put it in the chat at the beginning of the meeting, so I can do that again if people have joined us a bit later. Just a moment, please.
And the vote is taking place electronically, so this way everyone able to participate in it. If you are online, you're able to do so.
Okay, so Rochelle will launch the vote now.
If you're in support of the motion, please signify.
And I think we'll ask Rochelle to close the vote in about 5 more seconds. So Andrea, it looks like the vote passes.
Okay, thank you, Susan. And I'm sure I don't have to tell this to anyone, but we're in probably the 16th month since COVID, and we're still struggling in many ways with the pandemic. But I think the hardest part of it is losing, whether it's your coworkers or a loved one. Many of you are here that I'm sure could share about the tragedy within your own workplace and close to home. So I'm gonna ask if we take a minute, just a second, just to do a moment of silence in support, and our heart goes out to anyone that we lost so far. So can we take a moment silence, please? Thank you. Also, we're going to hear report for about 4 strike or lockout that's going on. Some have been resolved, and regardless of what's happening with the pandemic, it's clear that there is workers that are fighting for justice, fighting for decent wages, and just fighting to make sure that they have job security. And before we go any further, I'm going to call on someone, maybe Brother Tom, if he's here, to report on SEIU with the Wine Rock strike.
Andrea, I don't see Tom here. He must not have been able to make it.
Okay. So the Wine Rock strike that was happening, they resolved the strike. I know a few of you went out to that picket line where a number of these workers was fighting for decent wages. They were fighting also to make sure that they are scheduled according to their seniority. They were scheduled all over the place, and that wasn't, I don't think that's appropriate, knowing that when you're hired at a place where you need to know when you're working and the respect with it, they were scheduled out of seniority. Unfortunately, Brother Tom did report that the workers decided that they wanted to resolve that strike. They move on, not because they got anything better. The same offer that was on the table before they went on strike, they took the offer and and ratified that contract. They're also asking for labor to stay close to them because they know that there'll be retaliation on the job as people go back to work. So this is also one of the lessons out there, that as we do get ready, these employers are not going to be kind because of COVID. They are gearing up to fight workers for everything within them. So we got to make sure that this is the last one that we're hearing of, where workers have to just settle for less and to go back for the next few years before they take on another fight. Sister Carolyn Egan, can I ask you to report on Rex Plus strike, please?
Yes, Sister Andrea, for sure. And I'm from United Steelworkers Local 8300, and I'm president of the local that Rex Plus was the unit of. And I firstly want to thank Labor Council, Andrea and John, and all of the delegates who made their way out there, because we had a lot of trade union support on this strike. They struck on April 26th. They went back last week. It was approximately a 2-month strike. And when we reported on it last meeting, I think we were talking about a lot of zeros being offered. And most of the workplace were women. They felt they were being denied the dignity and respect they deserve. And first time they struck over a contract. And and they were solid, and they did an excellent strike. And I think what this shows is that not that I'm saying every strike can win, because every strike is different, but it shows that you can win with strong solidarity. Many of them are Sikh from the Punjab in India, and a lot of them got inspiration from the farmer strike out there. They were all from farmer families. They had relatives in that strike, and the sense of global struggle was very, very real to them. And they were there day and night, and a lot of support from their community, a lot of support from the trade union movement. And first 2.5 weeks, not one truck went in or out. After that, an injunction, scabs started coming in, and unfortunately the scabs were young women from their same community. And we tried very, very hard to convince them not to come into work and not to take the women's jobs. And actually we were able to get numbers of them to take jobs in our security sector that we've got unionized, and also at CIBC Visa. We had people from those workplaces coming. And actually the very next day from the last Labor Council meeting, we were able to convince the scabs coming in the morning and the scabs coming in on the night shift, all of them, to turn around and go home. And so it was a sense of accomplishment by the strikers. And I just want to thank the labor movement on behalf of them for the support and their own community. And it shows that we can fight and we can win. As I said, not every strike will be won, not every struggle will be won, but we can do it. And I think they just want to, through me, give real thanks to the support, because without the support, without the solidarity, it would have been way, way harder. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Carolyn. Also, we'll ask Manaz Hermad, the president of APSU Local 5117, to give a report.
I don't think Sister Manaz has been able to make it. I think Kingsley Kwok is going to give the report in her place.
Other Kingsley, go ahead. Brother Kingsley?
Hi,
Sorry.
Andrea. Can you hear me? My audio and video was choppy a minute ago.
Yes, please go ahead and give your report.
Right. So I'm here, Kingsley Kwok, Ops Local 575. I'm here on behalf of Manaz Puramani, president of OPSU Local 5117, who's where the members are on strike at Black Creek Community Health Center. One would think that the location is a COVID-19 hotspot. The employer is a community health center running vaccination clinics and community health medicine during this time, that they would be an ally to labor. Unfortunately, I am reporting that Local 5117 started its 4th week on strike because the employer walked away from the table earlier in June, and for not agreeing to raising wages at 1% per year, which is what the provincial government has passed legislation, and saying that if you are a public sector organization receiving money from the province, you can raise wages up to 1%. This employer is saying zero, no wage increases, and this employer has workers that has not received any wage increase in the last 7 years. So we are talking about the front desk medical secretary to any sort of health professionals that is in the service of Black Creek residents, anywhere from social workers, dietitians, diabetic educators, chiropodists, you name it. That's actually a respiratory therapist, just one that works for Black Creek Community Health Center and not like me in the hospital. So they've been on the streets. We are looking for donations. We are looking for comrades to join their picket line. Andrea has come out and addressed striking workers at the picket line. We really appreciate her. And I will be putting up donation information and picketing information in the chat. Last week was the week 3. The bargaining team actually met the employer again at the table up until Canada Day, and we still have not gotten to any settlement. And so any help from all our comrades is appreciated. That's all for now.
Thank you. And next, I have 2 other speakers here that you'll hear from, coming from USW Local 3950. Before they speak on the strike that's now a lockout, we're going to show a video.
We make material from recycled rubber. We make them into pieces, then send it to the press. The press cure it, and then send it to die cut in different sizes.
If it's 30 degrees outside, it's 45 inside. It's very hard work. The presses are very hot, and it's go, 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 go. It was a dictatorship, bullying kind of negotiations on their part. It wasn't even a negotiation.
The company gave us 63 concession.
They didn't want to come back to the table. They said that's it. By the 30th, the doors will be closed. And here we are today. Blockade, pretty much. Everywhere blocked off, everywhere locked up. You can see all these barriers here. They were never here before.
They have barricaded up the front. We know that there is another warehouse where a lot of the materials have been sent to. We have employees here who have 30 plus years of service, and now they want to remove the severance package. They have already set the stage for them to operate separate from this facility. And what's also troubling is because they have another operation in the United States. They have language in that other collective agreement that talks about the potential of shutting down this operation.
They maybe have some intention of closing down, and they don't really want to pay us.
In addition to that, they've put in language regarding forced overtime.
They want to force overtime. They want to pay your vacation and your paycheck bi-weekly. And if you want time off, you have to apply for leave of absence, and it will be up to the sole discretion of the company to grant your leave of absence.
And the company wants to treat us like we're nothing, and we're not going to stand for that.
Help us and join us and help us fight these employers.
Please come and join us on this picket line. These individuals need the support. They have worked long and hard for this company. They deserve that respect back.
Okay, so we're going to hear a little bit more from Lightburn Hunter and Trisha Watt. I think I said hello to Lightburn before. Okay. Please go ahead.
Hi everyone, my name is Lightburn Hunter. I'm the president for USW Local 3950. And effective June 30th, the company lock us out because we are in bargain. We start bargaining on May 6th. And the first proposal we received from the company was 63 different concessions. 63. We have one of the main issues. We have enhanced severance package. The company want to take that off completely. They don't want to renew that. They want to pay us our vacation on our paycheck. And if you want like vacation, you have to apply for leave of absence. And if they grant one person and don't grant the other, you cannot complain. Also, they want to have the right not to fill any position that they feel not necessary. So if you are operator 4, operator 2, operator 3, and they feel that operator 4 is not necessary, they can take away that position and bring you down to operator 2. And like you can't say nothing and you can't do nothing. It's crazy what they're doing there. And majority of the people here, they have like seniority from 20 years up to about 38. So And it's really hard work, and people dedicated all their life there. And now the company lock us out because they're not willing to go back to the bargaining table.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Trisha Watt, and I'm the staff representative with United Steelworkers, representing the employees, the members that are at NRT. And so in addition to the things that Lightburn has expressed, two of the main issues that are concerning to us, of course, is the removal of the severance language. This language has been in the collective agreement at least since 2006, and now all of a sudden they want to remove the language completely. They did not come to the table with any alternative language. It was just remove it. And so that in of itself was a red flag for us. Why all of a sudden do you not want severance language in the collective agreement? The other concerning proposal that they brought forward was to give a bare minimum increase to the employees. So that would be across the board for in each year, but then they had an attendance incentive. If you showed up to work every day for a month, you would get an additional money per hour. So what they've done is they've put in a proposal that would discriminate against anyone who's sick. What they've essentially said is, if you're sick, you're not worth getting the same amount of money as the person beside you doing the same job. So if Lightburn and I are doing the exact same job and we both make $10 an hour, because Lightburn is never absent, he has the potential to make hypothetically, $12 an hour. Whereas because I was absent one day that month or 2 days or whatever, I will not get that amount of money per hour. And we said to them, in a climate like this, where we have COVID, how could you justify bringing that kind of proposal to the table, where you're incentivizing people to show up to work sick? That is both a health and safety issue and a discrimination issue. So there are other concessions in there that we found very troubling, but definitely the removal of the severance package and this incentive to get paid for not being absent were two of the ones that there was no negotiating it on. And they made no effort to amend the language or to have any discussion with us about how we could even meet halfway. Not that I could tell you what the halfway point would be, but there was no effort on their part. So thank you for giving us some time in this meeting. And we really hope that you can come out and support. We were at 35 Cawthra Avenue, which is near Keele and St. Clair Avenue West. And we would really love to see you out there supporting these workers. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, I just, if I could just add, I just got something from our district saying that they are organizing a secondary picket at Tomlinson's Systems, which is where the CEO of NRT has his own business in Ancaster. And that's going to be taking place Thursday, July the 15th at 8 a.m. in the morning at 662 Shaver Road, Ancaster, Ontario. And what we're understanding is Local 1005, Steelworker Locals, the Hamilton Labor Council, and we're hoping people also from the Toronto Labor Council can help us go out there and, with the leadership of Tricia and Hunter and really show Tomlinson Systems and the CEO of NRT that the whole labor movement and the community is fighting on behalf of and by the side of these workers. So we're inviting everyone to come out to that.
Thank you. Brother Nathan, I see did you have a question regarding this strike?
I did. It was actually not, it was more of a statement. I felt compelled to speak right now because I am 400, where I'm sitting right now in my house, I'm 400 meters away from their picket lines. In fact, if I go up to my back bedroom, I can see your picket lines. And when I came, I drove actually from another steelworker great picket line yesterday from Sudbury. And as I drove by, I stopped and chatted with them. And I said, Will's definitely be out to support you. But I feel this is a little personal for me. It's in my neighborhood. I pay property tax in this neighborhood. Here's an employer once again trying to, I don't know what their motives are, but I send a lot of love from this neighborhood and solidarity. And I'll definitely be out there because I literally can see your picket line if I go upstairs. So God bless and solidarity to you.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So that's only four stories so far. At least two of them already settled, and there's the other two. And I'm sure this is not the only one that we're going to hear of. As I've said it before, there's a number of collective agreement that's coming up to expiration. And so far, I heard of employers also reaching out to unions to say, let's not bargain, let's sit down and look at how we can just continue with the collective agreement onward. And this is something that each union have to start looking at. When we are in a time like this, where we definitely know a lot of these employers, a lot of these owners benefit of the pandemic. They benefit out of this pandemic, and they're making plans how they're going to benefit even further. But one thing we know for sure, we have each other. When the support is needed, we have to make some time to go out. This is tough times, and we have to roll up our sleeve and do everything that we have to make sure that no one is behind. It's only corporation is going to benefit from this. So this could be very well a summer where we have to put our masks on and go out and try to figure out what we have to do to make sure that we send that strong message to every one of them that this is not, the pandemic not going to phase us. Thank you. I'm going to ask for our next speaker, Sister Krista Morale, Chair of APSU Indigenous Circle. I apologize if I pronounce your name incorrectly. If you could address us with the updates on the residential school. Welcome, sister.
Thank you. Sego ani bozu, yonkats Krista Miracle, you're like a de. So my name is Krista Miracle. I am a Mohawk from Tyendinaga, and I am the chair of OPSU's Indigenous Circle. I'm also the vice president at the OFL, representing the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit Circle. So I'm here today to talk to everybody here about residential schools. So I was asked to do just a kind of a brief history of residential schools in light of the finding of all the unmarked graves that have been happening out west, and the work that's actually being done now here in Ontario to find the unmarked graves here as well. So I'm just going to go through a bit of a timeline, just to try to give you an understanding of how long residential schools were around, and the fact that, you know, they're not really just in our history. So in the 1600s to the 1800s, religious orders ran mission schools for Indigenous children, and they were the precursor to the government-run residential school system. So just in looking at that, you can see that that's a very long time period before they even established an official residential school. So in 1931, the Mohawk Institute, which is in Brantford, Ontario, became a boarding school run by the Anglican Church. And it was the first government-funded residential school in Canada. And if you look at the year that I just said, 1831, there was no Canada yet, right? They didn't have Confederation yet. They hadn't signed the Dominion. And yet they had already, the government at the time had already established this school, all right? So in 1857, the government introduced what was called the Gradual Civilization Act, which was basically designed to strip Indigenous people of their culture and rights, right? So then in 1967, we have the Constitution Act, which created the Dominion of Canada, and the government took authority over Indigenous people, their education, specifically for First Nations, all right? In 1876, the Indian Act was created, and it gave control over Indigenous rights and culture, and it only included status First Nations, which they defined what a status First Nation was, and it excluded the Métis and the Inuit, although they already had at least one school in Saskatchewan that was specifically for the Métis. So then in 1883, Sir John A. Macdonald authorized the creation of the residential school system, which was designed to isolate Indigenous children from their families and cut all ties to their culture. By 1896, there were 40 schools in Canada. In 1920, the residential schools became mandatory for all 7 to 16-year-olds. And something that's interesting about that is the fact that they say that it was mandatory for 7 to 16-year-olds, and yet the government was going into Indigenous communities and taking children as young as 3. And yes, it was 3 years of age. So think about, when you were 3 years of age, how would you have felt if you were taken from your family and sent off to a boarding school? It was very traumatizing, not just for the children, but also for their families. But one of the things the government figured out is that the earlier they took the children, the easier it was to strip them of their language and culture because they didn't know it enough to be able to go back to it. So then in about 1922, Dr. Peter Henderson Bryce exposed the government's neglect of Indigenous children, specifically their health, including the alarmingly high death rates in residential schools. And yet the government did absolutely nothing after his report came out. In 1931, there were more than 80 residential schools in operation, which was the most at any one time. Then in 1948, 4 students were investigated for arson, as all the children stood outside their school and watched it burned and cheered. This was not the first school that would be burned down by the children within those schools. And it was not going to be the last, because there were many of them. But this was the first time they actually decided to try to prosecute students for burning down the school. In the 1950s, the Inuit were officially included into the residential school system, and they opened 6 schools specifically in the Western Arctic for those children. And they took hundreds of children within just that first year to go into their schools. And the one school in Inuvik had room for over 500 students. So then in the 1960s to 1980, more than 20,000 children were taken from their families by the government social workers and placed in foster care or adoption homes with non-Indigenous families. These adoptees lost connection to their language, their culture, their identity. Many people will know this as what was called the 60s scoop. And yes, it started in the 60s, but it went well on into the 80s. And even today, you will see many, many, many Indigenous children are still being taken from their families and being put into foster care with non-Indigenous families. In October of 1966, Cheney Wenjack died after escaping from the Cecilia Jeffreys School in Kenora, Ontario. A formal investigation followed, and an all-white jury actually found that residential schools caused tremendous emotional and psychological problems. And again, the government didn't do anything about it. So then in 1969, the Canadian government took over the final remaining schools that were being run by the church. So up until 1969, there were still church-run schools that were not under the government's control, although they were funded by the government. In 1979, thousands of Indigenous students were enrolled in the 28 still remaining residential schools in Canada. So basically between 69 and 79, they closed a lot of schools, amalgamated, and yet they still were taking children from their families. In October 1990, Phil Fontaine, who was the head of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, spoke publicly about the abuse he suffered at the Fort Alexander Residential School, and he called for a public inquiry. And finally, the government listened, and they started an inquiry in 1991. Then in 1996, Gordon's Residential School in Saskatchewan was the final federally run residential school that was closed. 1996. It wasn't that long ago. On November 21st of 1996, the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, their final report, recommended a public inquiry into the effects of residential schools, including language loss and trauma. In 2007, the government provided compensation to survivors of residential schools, including the Common Experience Payment and a focus on funding and supporting Indigenous health and healing services. This is also when they established the fund for the Truth and Reconciliation Report. On June 11th, 2008, Harper formally apologized to former students, their families, and communities for Canada's role in the operation of residential schools. He didn't take responsibility. He simply apologized for the way that they were actually part of that system. Then June 2nd, 2015 was the release of the Truth and Reconciliation Report and the 94 calls to action. The report characterized Canada's treatment of Indigenous children as cultural genocide. So within that report, there's a lot in that report, and I hope everybody has read this report. It has been 6 years, and they've only started acting on about 13 of the calls to action of the 94. So that tells you how quickly the government gets to things. But within that report, they identified 3,200 children that died within residential schools. And that was only 3,200 that they could find documentation on. And about a third of those children, they had no identification for. And this is concerning because, you know, they only documented 3,200, and yet when the Indigenous communities, you know, put together how many of their children went missing over the years, that number is over double what they found documented for deaths. And nobody really knows what exactly happened to all these children, which is why when we're looking at all these unmarked graves and cemeteries, this is why those numbers are so alarming, because, you know, there were 3,200 that had marked graves. That's it. So you know that that number is so much higher. And one of the things, so calls to action 71 to 76 actually called on the government to work with Indigenous communities to find and unearth all of these unmarked graves and cemeteries around the residential schools. And yet the government obviously had not acted on it. So it took, you know, the Kamloops school for taking the initiative in Kamloops to actually start this process. And as we know, once that started, everybody seemed to understand that, you know, this really did happen. A lot of people, I think, when the TRC report came out, they didn't actually believe that what was in the report was completely true. People thought, oh, no, that happened long ago in the past. People didn't understand how recent this was. So the intergenerational trauma felt in every Indigenous family, and it doesn't matter whether you're First Nations, Métis, or Inuit, there's trauma in your family. You cannot find one family that doesn't have some family member that ended up in a residential school or that has missing family members. You know, my own family, my grandfather had several brothers and sisters, and yet we only ever met one. And we have no idea what happened to the rest of them. And my grandfather never knew. He's one of the unfortunate ones that were taken when he was only 4 years old to go to a residential school. And one of the things that they really did is they did their very best to ensure that these kids could not get home again. So a lot of kids, you know, they would show up at what they had as day schools, and then they would grab them from the day schools and sit them on trains and send them across the country so that they were as far away from their families as they could get them, so they couldn't find their ways back. And many times the parents were never given any notification on where exactly their child went. So we're going to have a short video that's going to play. So for those of you that are on the phone, there are no words on this video. It does have captions that come up with information on it. Most of it is things that I've already talked about. Once it's finished, I will give a little summary of what was actually said within the video on the screen. So go ahead and play.
Get a real-time bird's eye view of your projects. Create project plans in one click.
Thank you. So for those on the phone, basically what was in that video is it talks about the fact that over 150,000 First Nations, Métis, and Inuit children went to residential schools. Their ongoing research says that at least 4,100 children died amid neglect. They died from illnesses such as tuberculosis, abuse leading to suicide, drownings, runaways, and infants fathered by priests. And about half the deaths the commission identified, there's no actual cause of death marked down. And many times parents were never told that their child was ill or that they died. One thing also to remember is that a lot of times, when the child in the residential school died from a cause such as childbirth, that was not what was listed as their cause of death. They would have given them some sort of illness like pneumonia as their cause of death. And it was because they obviously were trying to cover up the fact that the priests were raping the girls and fathering children. And then there are so many stories out there, and they're absolutely horrific about what they did to these babies when they were born. And it traumatized not just the children within those residential schools, but the families as well, learning that this is the kind of treatment that their children had. And this wasn't just things that happened, when the schools first opened. This happened all the way through up until 1996, that these atrocities were happening. So that's what I have to say on residential schools. I'm sorry that it is very heart-wrenching, but this is not something that we can make better. And one of the things that we've always talked about is that the schools were open for 7 generations. And it's going to take at least 7 generations for the trauma to heal. So we ask that everybody please be patient, because that intergenerational trauma is not going to go away in a day. we're never going to forget about this, and we hope that no one ever forgets, and that we all learn from the atrocities that happened. Nyawango, miigwech, thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for spending some of your time just to bring us closer to your circle. The last few weeks, I see every community coming together. It's clear for the at least over a year where different communities are coming together, whether it's around the issue of George Floyd, or coming closer to the family that has been murdered, to where we are right now, knowing fully well every so often as we are hearing more and more of all these bodies that are found, and still looking and hoping this is the end, but we definitely know it's not. But I think one thing that's really important, that we are coming together, and at the same time, when we are dealing with a lot of anti-racism, I think our community, they're thankful for you allowing us to come into that space as one. We are human beings, and this is the time when we need to be closer and closer. So I appreciate you coming out to share with us a little bit more. And on July 1st, again, as we are talking about all these things that's happening in one community or the other, we can't forget about the Chinese community, whether we are battling anti-Asian racism. We also have to look back at the 1st of July, where another group came together. The Labor Council was a part of that, to share and to reflect on the Chinese railroad workers, thousands of them that lost their life building and maintaining the railroad. Brother Kingsley, who is also from the Chinese network of the Labor Council, I want to ask him if he could just give us a little bit of report on the July 1st ceremony, and then we are going to share a short video as well. Brother Kingsley, can you update us on the 1st of July ceremony, please? Brother Kingsley?
He's still on the meeting, but I wonder if something's happened with his audio again.
Huh.
I'm back.
Okay, good. So can you give us a report of the July 1st ceremony?
Yes, thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Susan. Once again, Kingsley Kwok. On July 1st, in the morning, Andrea Babington, our Labor Council president, and I participated on an online commemoration of Chinese railroad workers, and which also included a wreath laying ceremony. The foundation to commemorate Chinese railroad workers has been around since the 80s, and in 1989, the statue to commemorate Chinese railroad workers was put up.
Kingsley seems to be frozen. Andrea, you can let me know if you want to make a couple of comments, and I could post the video.
Sure.
It looks like he's fallen off.
Okay. Yes. So that's right. So they had the wreath laying ceremony that went on. Most of this ceremony was virtual. A few politicians that attended that ceremony, and very well attended. I think what was also important, that as they are reflecting on what's happened in the past, we were also together looking at where we are in the present, with Labor Council coming to the forefront also to talk about dismantling hate, whether in one community or the other. That was very important. And leaving that ceremony where all of us understand fully that this is not the end of what's happening in each community, and the work must be done. There was one part at the ending that I really like, and I totally forget the name of the writer, but someone who came in and decided that they wanted to do a song in support of these heroes that lost their life as they built the railroad. So Kingsley's not on, but if Susan could put the video on, that would be awesome.
When the Canadian Pacific Railroad was born, you heard the names of Sir John A. Macdonald and William Van Horn, but you rarely hear the mention of 10,000 Chinese men who gave their lives to build the rails through the Rockies way back when. They were the unsung heroes of our history, the unsung heroes, treated like zeros, the unsung heroes of our history. They gave those Chinese men the toughest jobs to push the railroad through, doing dangerous work that no white man would do. They blasted holes in massive mountains using tons of dynamite, braving perilous rocky cliffs on freezing winter nights. These men were unsung heroes, the unsung heroes of our history, the unsung heroes, treated like zeros, the unsung heroes of our history. Through the Rocky Mountains, the railway took its toll, built on the backs of hundreds of the hardest working souls. Yes, the CPR was grand, but at what human cost? For every mile of track, they say, 4 Chinese lives were lost. These men were the unsung heroes, the unsung heroes of our history, the unsung heroes, treated worse than zeros, the unsung heroes of our history. When the railroad was finished, the men were somewhat free. Some moved off to Vancouver or on to Calgary, but they never were accepted and they still got dirty looks. So they took whatever few jobs they could as kitchen help or cooks. From the time they came to Canada and first stepped on this land, the Chinese people rarely felt a warmer welcoming hand. But we've grown and become a nation where people can be free to live and give and be a part of a community. and we salute those unsung heroes, the unsung heroes of our history, the unsung heroes, treated like zeros, the unsung heroes of our history.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I want to just jump in a little bit on our agenda. We asked Brother Ainsworth to report on the IWAC, but he's not here. And I want to just touch on all the speakers that spoke on the different, and what's happening in different communities where the Indigenous and Workers of Color Conference was so important, with a theme of rising above the storm. It's a continuation of us coming together to make sure that we are having conversation about what's happening to us in each community and moving forward even stronger. We had a really good turnout for that conference. Over 200 participants, even though it's virtual, that came on and stayed for the entire conference. And those topics are on challenging racism and racial trauma, environmental racism, land acknowledgement and reconciliation, mental health in the workplace and migrant workers, and the impact of COVID. It was so important. There was a lot of good feedback that came from it. And definitely want to throw out there that this is just the right time for us to having these conversations, whether it's virtual, whether it's in our community or our kitchen table or in the workplace, to make sure that we keep stronger together. So for sure, just to let you know that that conference was well attended, and hopefully next year we have more, not just you that came, but others that you can bring forward, so we can continue doing whatever we have to do to dismantle racism within our community and in the workplace. Okay. I also want to talk a little bit about the Labor Day parade. That's Labor Day is coming up. I should say first, before I say parade, that we have Labor Day coming. Last year, we did have Labor Day, more of virtual Labor Day, whatever it takes. We did that last year along with press conference. And this year, we want to get ready for Labor Day. With all of what's happening this year again, and the struggle that's happening and what we face, we know that there's 2 elections that's coming up next year. We know for sure that there's a lot of fights on the ground. With the recovery from COVID, from the pandemic, no one's gonna do it for us. This is a time that we have to start turning to each other and really answering if we are ready for recovery. Last year, it's a just recovery for all, and this year the theme for Labor Day is rising up for a just recovery. This is time that we have to start taking back what's ours. The 1% not gonna do that. The 1% already start getting themselves ready. They're recovering. They definitely are recovering, and we have to do it for ourselves. They're not gonna do it. So I wanted to think about the theme, rising up for a just recovery, and for each union, what does that mean for you? Let us get ready for Labor Day. We are working on the plan for Labor Day, and whatever that's going to be, we want to make sure that you're not just doing the virtual, but we're hitting the street, whether we have to do it in our cars, making sure that we are going to Queen's Park, making sure that we are getting ready for the election. All these are plans that we have to do to make sure that we take back what's ours. So that's the theme so far, and just to keep that in mind when you go back into your own union to talk about how are you going to recover in your own union. what Labor Day should look like for you. Sorry. We have a statement, next the statement on the agenda, and it's called Deja Vu, Deja Vu, Deja Vu. So before the pandemic, we know that the education union, the education workers was on the ground already fighting. And since then, it turned into a different fight where whether it's the fourth government that's up in our face, it's the same attack that the education workers, the education union are facing. Ford is still there, not backing down. There's a lot of issues when it comes to parents and students and for our own unions that are under attack with this government. So we have a statement here that I would like to call for speakers on that. If Sister Philomena is here as the first speaker to speak on the statement, would be great.
Sorry, I had an email from Philomena sending her regrets. She was called off to another meeting, so she won't be able to speak to the statement, unfortunately. Oh,
actually,
sorry, I misspoke.
Okay.
So timing's perfect. Sorry about that. That what Susan said is correct. But I just got off that meeting to just speak briefly to the statement because Andrea calls and I'm going to be there when she calls. So they just have to wait. Yes, Philomena Ferraro Oecta. This statement is a pretty comprehensive snapshot of what's happened in the last 12 to 15 months in education. Total mismanagement, total chaos in our schools in terms of, schools are open, schools are closed, the economy's open while the schools are closed and vice versa. Safety protocols have never been met. These so-called enhanced safety measures that were supposed to come out after the second wave never really happened. This government continues to mislead the public, saying that they're making these historic investments in education, yet we are not seeing it at the ground level. In fact, our school boards are off doing whatever they want, and there seems to be no consistency, which leads to a lot of inequalities when it comes to delivering publicly funded education to students in York Region and Toronto, because school boards are just trying to manage with what they have. And what we know is that this government is underfunding our school boards. In fact, they've cut $1 billion from the education budget, and we're not quite sure what September looks like. So here we are again, calling on the government to return our students to face-to-face learning, which is what we prefer, and not these alternative models that school boards feel they have to go to, like the hybrid model, which we're fighting, where teachers are teaching students face-to-face and online at the same time, which is a horrible way to teach. So the quality of public funded education, the delivery of education, the lack of safety protocols, not knowing what's happening is causing a lot of stress for teachers, education workers, students, and parents. And all we're asking is to be consulted, but yet we're not being consulted, and we're not even sure when this back to school plan for September will happen. We're here, it might be the end of July. So this statement, I'm in agreement with this statement because it truly speaks to what is happening in education. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. Any more speaker? Okay.
I see two speakers.
So I see
Felicia.
Jenny and then Felicia. Go ahead. Okay.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Jenny, and I'm a
delegate and a shop steward for Workers United, Local 154, which is a social service agency. And I just want to say, I think the statement highlights so many important issues, some unfortunately quite long-standing, because I know when the pandemic was first occurring, teachers were talking about the major concerns. Actually, this has been going on for years about the infrastructure concerns around ventilation, around online learning that provoked, I think, some of the largest student walkouts in Canadian history, right? Like we had like 150,000 high school students walking out in protests. And I know that there was a really powerful teacher strike. I remember being at Queen's Park with over 30,000 educators and community members, students, parents, really, really inspiring. And so I guess what I'm kind of just sharing here is I think this statement is a very important one. I think the cuts of $1.6 billion is atrocious. We know this is going to affect not only the physical buildings of the schools, but the very important and crucial services to students, especially around mental health, and of course teachers as well, right? It's everyone's well-being that's at stake here. So I'm very supportive with a lot of the sentiments of this, and I think there's a lot of important calls that are being highlighted. The only thing I think that would be powerful to give this a little bit more of that fight, if I can put it out there, and one that I would gladly mobilize my local and you know any labor circles that I'm a part of, is it'd be nice to see like a day of action and some like taking this on, like, you know, like not just lobbying our politicians or lobbying the school boards or lobbying Doug Ford. Yeah, like those can be good mobilizing tools, but I really think like a strong, powerful day of action, like, you know, where the Labor Council helps organize. I think the OFL should be a part of that. Of course, the teachers union should all be done in partnership. But I think a powerful day to say we are not going to accept these cuts. We need a safe reopening. We've seen how people have really galvanized the issues around education. We've seen it from students, we've seen it from parents, and we've seen it from teachers. So I just think a day of action with some mobilizing and escalating actions would really help to take those calls and that lobbying action that much further. And I'll just share, you know, the Chicago's Teachers Union, when the pandemic was going on, they were saying, we're not going to open the schools unless it's safe. Like there was some really interesting militant tactics that those unions took. So again, I'm here just to sort of share as, you know, because I care about these issues. And I just think that that's something that would help strengthen this statement.
Thank you. Felicia, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, and I support what the previous speakers have been saying. In terms of a safe September, there's been nothing put in place. I was speaking with a teacher today who let me know that he has 30 kids that lined up for his classroom next year for his grade 5 or 6. And common sense would dictate we're coming out of a pandemic. It's very possible we could find ourselves in another wave. How are we not trying to make accommodations to make sure that students and educators are safe? So the government, as usual, is failing. They're not looking out for the best interests of our kids. And we really need to stand strong and be loud about this, because it's not only the health and safety issues, it's the fact that they are taking money away from the system when they should be putting it in. They're doubling down on not respecting public education. And that is a problem and a red flag. Just today, sorry, my battery's almost dying. I hope can you still hear me, Andrea? Am I good?
Go ahead.
Okay, because my battery is just dying. My apologies, everyone. So yeah, even today, there's an article going around on social media. PC MPP, her name is Gila Marto, talking about why should we pay a teacher? Maybe even do this virtual learning. So instead, they want to have recordings, pre-recordings for students instead of having live teaching. This government is frightening. What they want to do to our education system is unconscionable. They're cutting. They're wanting to bring a privatized education system to Ontario, and we need to stop them. So yeah, we're mobilizing to get them out come June, but right now we need to be saying that we will not tolerate this. This is not what we are going to accept for our kids, and this statement is shining a light on this. So please write your MPPs, reach out to your friends, your neighbors. Labor is a family. We need to be really calling on people to step up and to say something, because when we don't speak, they steamroll over us. And this is an issue that we can fight back on and win, So please, I encourage you all to support the statement. And thank you for everyone who contributed to writing it.
Thank you. Am I missing any speaker? There.
No further speakers.
Okay, so we're going to put up the poll to vote on the statement. Wow. All right.
Okay, we'll give you another 5 seconds to cast your vote. All right, nearly unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna invite our next speaker, Sister Jan Simpson. She's also the National President of Canadian Union of Postal Workers, and she's here to talk to us about the 40th anniversary of postal workers strike that won the paid maternity leave.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, Andrea, for having me here this evening. I'm honored to be here, able to speak to you today about a great victory for the Postal Workers Union as well as the Canadian labor movement. I'm participating today from the unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation, and I wish we could be meeting face to face, but meeting virtually is what we need to do to continue the struggles that we're fighting against these employers that we heard about earlier on from our other union activists as well. So about 40 years ago, postal workers, we shut down the postal service and went on strike. In addition to wages, we had 3 major demands on the table during that round of bargaining. We wanted to improve our health and safety and to reduce the high injury rate and place greater obligation on the employer for these injury rates. Also, we wanted to prohibit surveillance camera footage from being used for disciplinary purposes. They're actually putting the cameras in the washroom to see when you were taking what they called unofficial breaks in that. And finally, paid maternity leave. For technical purposes, we asked for a supplementary unemployment benefit, which would allow women on maternity leave to receive 90% of their wages instead of just 60% that was paid by the unemployment insurance at that time. It's important to note that prior to postal workers going on strike, our negotiations with Canada Post, and more precisely our demands for paid maternity leave, drew in the interest of many, including the federal government. The sitting federal government knew that if Canada Post agreed to paid maternity leave, then other government departments and even the private sector would be forced to follow suit. The government was very reluctant to create this precedent. While the government and private sector at large are worried about the outcome of our negotiations, CUPW, we continued to build support. We wrote discussion papers, we were educating the public and aligning ourselves with the women's movement. Our strike would last for 42 days. So on week 3, the employer agreed to our health and safety proposal. They agreed to all of them. The following week, which was week 4, they agreed to the protections for surveillance cameras. But it took 6 full weeks before they agreed to the maternity leave top-up. And the agreement only provided for 93%, not the 95% that we were actually asking for. So with our strike is a great example of the power of the labor movement to make changes that benefit our society as a whole. In 1991, the bargaining and the strike showed how gains and struggles of some unions ultimately helped others. Our victory was a culmination of many factors. So by the 1980s, many women had become a significant demographic, accounting for about 44% of CUPW's membership. As well, a group of passionate, dedicated sisters, including Jane Marsh, who I think is on the call today, as well as she wrote an article in Briar Patch last week that I encourage you to read. Also, Sister Marion Pollock and Ruth Larson, and many more stood up to the male leadership and rightfully demanded that CUPW lead the struggle for women's rights. So other unions, including the auto workers and the steel workers, along with the NDP, had fought and won to amend the EI program that permitted employers to top up EI benefits. In December 1980, 6 months before our strike, the federal translators went on strike for paid maternity leave. Of course, CUPW, we walked that picket line with them as well, but ultimately they lost and returned to work empty-handed but that set the stage for our next round of bargaining. As some of you may remember, we were attacked left, right, and center by Canada Post and the government. Every crazy argument you could imagine was made against us. It's too expensive. Postal rates would rise too much. I want to remind you that the cost of maternity leave for Canada Post would be 1/4 of 1%. That's all it would cost them to give maternity leave to the women workers at Canada Post at that time. We had right-wing talk show hosts claim that women would stay home and have kids and never want to come back to work. Some said that maternity leave would backfire because Canada Post would only hire men if we were successful. We found this very strange argument be coming from men that had never demonstrated any concern for women workers before. After 6 weeks, we agreed to a compromise. We got 93%. Soon afterwards, we were able to extend this leave to also to the adoptive parents. After our settlement, the government moved quickly to improve maternity and parental benefits. Other unions were successful in negotiating paid maternity leave as well after this. And now many unions have provisions that are even stronger than ours is right now. They say that in any struggle, we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors. Our victory was due to the workers who struggled for the creation of the unemployment insurance and the unions and the NDP that won the provision for supplementary unemployment benefits. We learned from and built on the struggles of the other unions who had fought for this benefit before we did. And our victory was possible because of the support of the women's movement and progressive people who supported our picket lines and reinforced the determination of our membership. And of course, it never would have happened without the women in our union who stood up and demanded that it happen. I'm immensely proud of my union and what we were able to accomplish in 1981 and everything else that we've been doing since then for workers and women's rights as well. I look forward to working with all of you to make a real difference and change the labor movement and society as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. Yeah, and again, as Sister Jen talked about one of the huge victory that postal workers have over those years, it's something that spread in this country. I always say a lot of our members don't realize, and a lot of workers outside of the union do not realize this when they are getting ready for maternity leave, where it comes from. This is one of the legacy that came up the back of union members and men that also led some of those fights, where we have to spend a little bit more time, I think, patting ourselves for the good work that we've done to build up this country, and also to make sure that we are sharing these victories with everyone, because it's taken for granted when politicians decide to talk about what's union, the fat cat, not knowing that a lot of these legacy that we so enjoy come from the back of union members that fight for them. So thank you very much for coming and sharing with us. We have someone else with us tonight that was on the board with us, and I'm sure she's not going to be here anymore, but I want to invite Sister Lily Chang to give a little bit of report and also probably wave her goodbye. I don't think she have any time to change her mind anymore. So Sister Lily, can you?
Thank you, Andrea, and hello, sisters, brothers, and friends. It's really great to be here with you all this evening. You'll notice my bright blue CLC/Team Missouri background here. This is actually my very first event as Secretary Treasurer, and I'm so happy it's with you folks tonight. As I said before, you are my Labor Council family. It's been a busy couple of weeks following convention. We've had transition meetings with outgoing officers, introductory meetings with staff, and more in-depth meetings with political assistants and directors. I got my email and phone set up, and I'm familiarizing myself with all the policies and procedures. And I even reviewed a draft budget last week. So it's been a busy 2 weeks. I'm so humbled for the work that is, so excited for the work that's in front of me, and so humbled by the support and faith that the movement has put in me. But I feel prepared to take on the challenges facing the movement today because of the work I did with all of you at this Labor Council. It was here that the political lessons got learned And it was here with all of you that the political battle scars were earned. So my friends, the challenges facing us are formidable. In the next couple of months, we're going to have a federal election. And this election is going to give a mandate to the next parliament to guide how Canada is going to come out of this pandemic. It is our job to make sure that workers are at the center of the recovery, because workers are the recovery. I want you to know that myself, along with Bea, Siobhan, and Larry, have hit the ground running, and we've already started putting together an election strategy. Our plan is going to focus on the creation of good jobs, not tax breaks for corporations. We are going to maintain our call for a single-payer universal pharmacare program and keep up the fight for a national childcare program. I think this is now the 6th time that the Liberals have promised childcare. I don't know, maybe number 6 is a charm. But this pandemic has shown us that we need better healthcare and standards for long-term care. We need a stronger social safety net to tackle precarity and insecurity so that no one is left behind. And so we must seize the opportunity to protect our planet for future generations by demanding bold climate action and a sustainable recovery. And we're also going to make sure that the wealthy pay their fair share. Some companies like Amazon and Loblaw, for example, have made record profits during the pandemic. And it's only fair that they pay their fair share in our recovery. So we're anticipating a RIT drop sometime this summer. Earlier today, we also rolled out our theme for Labor Day. And the CLC theme, if you haven't guessed it by now, is Workers Are the Recovery. We are putting together a suite of tools for labor councils and our activists on the ground to use, which we will roll out in early August. So stay tuned for digital training sessions and keep your eye on election speculation, because when that RIT drops, we have to be ready. And I mean that especially here. Toronto is the country's largest city, and it's home to its financial center as well as its media center. So we will not be successful unless our message is heard loud and clear in the 6th. And I should also mention that this federal election is the springboard for what comes next, right? We all know that less than a year away, there's a chance for us to finally stop Doug Ford. And for the first time since the 90s, we will have a real pathway to elect an NDP government. And then almost immediately after that, and this will surprise no one who worked with me on the municipal committee, a very important municipal election. The next 12 to 18 months in Ontario are going to be very formative. We have a chance to reshape it in our image, and it's an opportunity that we cannot miss. So I want to thank you for inviting me tonight. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. If you have any suggestions for our campaigns or anything else, please feel free to contact our great rep, Heather Erlin, who is also here tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lily. All the best. So with that, again, as Lily rolled out, that we have a lot of work on our hands. We have to get ready, and some of us have to say we are ready. There's no one going to do it for us. I just want to announce, I should have done that earlier. At the end of the meeting, after we adjourn, we are going to ask for anyone that want to stay behind as we get ready for our Labor Day parade or whatever we're going to do for Labor Day. Part of it with the Rise Up for Just Recovery. We would like, for anyone who would like to participate in a quick video that Susan will do that part, with people just staying behind for that quick few seconds of doing your Rise Up. And she'll video that, and then we'll merge that into the bigger part of it later. So that's for the end of it. So please stay on and put all of your effort into that. All of what you want to send to Doug Ford into it. Let Shay put it into it. Even the neighbors put it into it. Okay. All right. So with that, with Lily leaving us, we also have to talk a little bit about some transition. So one, we send the notice out already through the e-blast to let you know that we're not having an August delegates meeting. but we are back back September. And for September meeting, we are going to have the nomination for 2 vacancies. There's 2 vacancies, one's for the vice president and also one for the executive board member. And that's September. And if we need to have an election, that would be in October. So stay tuned for that. And I'm going to turn over to Susan a little bit.
Okay, it's time for the almost monthly 150th anniversary labor quiz. We've got 3 questions for you tonight. And so we're going to ask you to vote online, those of you who are here, and I'm going to read the questions out. And the first question is, who was the first Labor Council president to come from York Region? Was it Linda Torney? Was it Andrea Babington? Was it Mike Lyons? Or was it John Cartwright? The first Labor Council president to come from York Region. We'll give you about 10 seconds more to think about this and cast your ballot. Okay, countdown 5 seconds. Okay, we're going to end polling and show you the results. So this shows that more people think that Mike Lyons was the first Labor Council president to come from York Region. Now, it may be that there's something that I don't know about Mike Lyons, but my understanding was that Andrea Babington is the first person, the first Labor Council president to come from York Region. So unless there's somebody who knows that Mike absolutely came from York Region, then it's Andrea. Now we'll go on to the second question. You're going to notice a bit of a theme here. What age was Labor Council President Andrea Babington when she became chief steward at her hotel? Was she 19? Was she 22? Was she 27? Or was she 34? Which would have been impossible because that would have had to have been, a couple of years in the future. Was she 19, 22, 27, or 34 when she became chief steward at her hotel? Give you 5 more seconds. All right. Indeed, Andrea was 19, one of the youngest chief stewards of all times. And now the third question. Again, you'll see a bit of a theme here. What did Andrea do together with other members of Unite Here Local 75 to build connection, solidarity, and power? Sing in a union choir, do kitchen visits with members or potential members, occupy hotel lobbies, or all of the above? Do 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 do. Do 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 do. All right, we're going to end polling there, and there we are. Almost everybody got it right. All of the above. So Andrea at Unite Here, all sorts of solidarity and connection activities, from singing together to making sure that they were out talking to their members on a regular basis, and the fun occupation of hotel lobbies. What a pleasure it was to see that. Thank you, everybody. Back over to you, Andrea.
Thank you. I feel like I should collect the gift for it. I'm not sure what Susan have to offer for that, but thanks. Okay, so we're going to move on to council project. No, before we go there, sorry, the CLC report. I'm not sure if Heather, are you still here, Heather? Any report?
I'm here. Thank you, Andrea. And good evening, everyone. So just want to start off by congratulating Lily, who is here on the call. I think I speak for everyone here that we're so thrilled to have you in this leadership role, especially from your home Labor Council family. We had an election, we had a convention since the last time I saw all of you. So we have a new president. Her name is Bea Brusk. She's from Manitoba. We have Lily Chang as our Secretary Treasurer, Siobhan Vipon from Alberta as Executive Vice President, and Larry Rousseau also as an Executive Vice President. And just to do a recap of some of the ongoings of the convention, I'm going to pop these links into the chat, but I'm going to pop in each of the policy papers. There was one on the climate emergency agenda, one on the human rights agenda, good jobs policy paper, and a democratic agenda policy paper. So they are definitely worth the read. John Cartwright also spoke specifically around the climate emergency one in one of the things that he spoke towards, and it is well worth checking out. I'm also going to pop into the chat the motions, the resolutions that were passed, the list of fallen workers since the last convention, and also the victories that we've achieved since the last convention. So it was a massive event. It went on for several days, and there was a lot of good feedback around the accessibility measures that were taken in order to ensure that everyone could fully participate. But those are, we're just thrilled to be welcoming in our new officers and preparing, as Lily said, for the federal election that could be as soon as the end of August for a writ drop. So if you do have anything that you'd like to share as far as the priorities that you want to see, as Lily said, I'll put my email into the chat as I usually do. So thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. So next we'll move on to the council project. And I believe we have Brother Stephen Shalon. Over to you. Is he still here, Stephen?
I'm still here, but my mouse wasn't. So sorry about that. Just to say that LEC has last week submitted a proposal to the federal government to provide training for women wanting to re-enter the workforce. What's unique about this program is that it has to be delivered in 2 provinces, and we were approached by the Skills Center in Trail, British Columbia, to collaborate with them. So it's a first for us, and we're very hopeful that we'll be able to work together to provide services for women wanting to re-enter the workforce post COVID-19. That's really the only thing I have to report at this time. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you. So next we're going to move on to committee and union reports. So anyone that have any report for us, please raise your hand. Brother Abdi.
Okay, so I'm a union report. So is there any committee report for me, sister?
No, there's no.
So, okay, so that's great. So sisters and brothers, comrades, good evening. My name is Abdi Hag Yusuf. I'm from Canadian Union of Postal Workers, Toronto Local. I want to report that this time was the time we were supposed to start negotiating a new collective agreement because our old collective agreement will expire soon. In a couple of weeks ago, actually over 1 month ago, our national Canada Post approached our national executive board for 2 years of extension of collective agreement for urban and RSMC that contains of 2% raise, that contains of expansion of a trial for postal banking, and there was no rollbacks at what they submit to our union. So now we will start the membership to decide whether we go ahead and take this one or continue to negotiate, start negotiating. So that's where we are now. We have 2 years extension, and our national executive board recommended unanimously to accept it, the new 2 years extension. There's also a bonus of $500 for full-time and $250 for part-time workers. So we're waiting more details, and we will come back when we get more. Thank you, sister. Back to you, Andrea.
Thank you. Brother Nathan?
Hey, thank you, sister. I'll be very quick. So on behalf of our business agent, we, some of you might know, the entertainment business was decimated, but there's high hopes that it will be going full guns starting in the fall into the new year. Having said that, our business agents reached out to all our members and said, if you know anyone that would like to get on our permanent T call list. So on behalf of our business agent, if any of the delegates has family or friends, because we want to keep it in the labor family, if you want more information on getting that call list, I'm going to put my contact information as the labor delegate, and reach out to me, and I will forward that information on to you. And to be clear, this is not a union drive. It's just we do go outside our local once in a while. So I'd rather give it to your family and friends. All right. So I'll put that in the chat. If you're interested, let me know. Cheers.
Thank you. I am not seeing. Is there someone else? I thought I saw a hand before.
I think Doug had his hand up before, but may have taken it down.
Okay, so is that it?
I'm just scanning through to see if anyone has their hand up, but that looks like that's it.
Okay, so again, before we close off, for anyone that want to stay behind and just for a few minutes to do the rise up for just recovery, please stay, don't get off. And I think this is it for our meeting. So can I get a motion to adjourn this meeting? Anyone could put their hand up to adjourn this meeting, then we'll be on our way. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, wow.